Welcome to the Beau Show, everyone. I appreciate you watching, whether that's on NTD, on television, or on streaming platforms like Epoch TV. Make sure you subscribe so you can catch all the great content that Epoch TV has to offer. You probably know by now that Governor Ron Desantis of Florida is a bold governor. He does not shy away from controversy or his desire to serve Floridians. And he's spoken proudly about how he wants his state to be run, and followed that up with legislation. Throughout the pandemic, DeSantis kept Florida largely open so that the state's economy wouldn't suffer. And it did not see the COVID hospitalizations or deaths at the rates that liberals probably expected and likely wanted to see. And even recently, he said this.
Have to wear those masks. I mean, please take them off. Honestly, it's not doing anything, and we got to stop with this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous.
Now remember, he told them, you can wear the mask if you want to, but it's not doing any good. And it's funny because maybe someone told them to wear the masks because they were going to be on camera, which actually speaks to the theater that he's referring to. Similar to that sentiment, DeSantis said a few months ago, quote, if you are in one of those corporations, if you're a woke CEO, you want to get involved in our legislative business, look, it's a free country, but understand, if you do that, I'm fighting back against you. And I'm going to make sure that people understand your business practices and anything I don't like about what you're doing, unquote. So once again, DeSantis is not telling CEOs that they can't speak up, but there will be consequences if they do. And so Disney's CEO Bob Chapek did exactly that. Chapek recently publicly condemned a controversial Florida bill called the Parental Rights and Education Bill that would ban classroom instruction about sexual orientation and gender identity before the 4th grade. He said this.
I called Governor DeSantis this morning to express our disappointment and concern that if legislation becomes law, it could be used to unfairly target gay, lesbian, non-binary, and transgender kids and families. He was very open to this conversation and finding out what aspects are most concerning and working to ensure that that could not happen in the state of Florida with this legislation.
So Disney has now said it is pausing all political donations in Florida pending review of the bill. Disney has made large donations to the Republican Party in Florida and to Ron DeSantis himself. DeSantis responded with a statement that read, quote, woke Disney is now echoing Democrat propaganda and falling for the corporate media's phony hysteria, unquote. DeSantis also said this in response at a recent event.
So here's what I can tell you. In the state of Florida, we are not going to allow them to inject transgenderism into kindergarten. First graders shouldn't have woke gender ideology imposed in their curriculums, and that is what we're standing for, because we're standing for the kids and we're standing for the parents. And I can tell you this, the chance that I am going to back down from my commitment to students and back down from my commitment to parents' rights simply because of fraudulent media narratives or pressure from woke corporations, the chances of that are zero. And when you have companies that have made a fortune off being family friendly and catering to families and young kids, they should understand that parents of young kids do not want this injected into their kids' kindergarten classroom. They do not want their first graders to go and being told that they can choose an opposite gender. That is not appropriate for those kids. And so if you're family friendly, understand the parents who are actually raising families want to have their rights respected. And I also think that if you have companies like a Disney that are going to say and criticize parents' rights, they're going to criticize the fact that we don't want transgenderism in kindergarten and first grade classrooms, if that's the hill that they're going to die on, then how do they possibly explain lining their pockets with their relationship from the Communist Party of China? Because that's what they do, and they make a fortune, and they don't say a word about the really brutal practices that you see over there at the hands of the CCP. And so in Florida, our policy is going to be based on the best interest of Florida citizens, not on the musing of corporations.
DeSantis really upped the ante here and makes a very valid point about not just parental rights, but about Disney's very cozy relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, where not only can you not mention gay, you can't mention anything critical of the government at all. So isn't this ironic? Disney wants to review this bill and pause all political donations, all because they think that it discriminates, when in China, from whom they make tremendous profit, they are entirely silent about. This is the woke corporate hypocrisy. Criticize the state government, whose tax-friendly policies give you great profit in America, but say nothing about the entire country whose communist government allows no dissent. Honestly, it's the same issue with the NBA and LeBron James. They want to be all woke, but they are strangely silent when it comes to the business they do with China. No one will call China out. Isn't that odd to you? This is all eerily reminiscent of what happened in Georgia with the election integrity laws. Coca-Cola went Woca-Cola. Delta Airlines became welcome to Mile High Wokeness. The MLB even pulled the All-Star game out of Georgia because they didn't agree with things as logical as voter ID. They were told the bill was racist by Stacey Abrams without ever reading the bill itself, so they just went along with it. And then the Atlanta Braves won the World Series in Georgia. This is the backlash of stupid corporate activism. They criticize the country that affords them the freedom to prosper, and also criticize the state that has allowed them to prosper, but won't say one single critical thing about China. DeSantis said he's perfectly willing to sit down and have a conversation with Bob Chapek about the bill, but he wants Chapek to actually know what's in the bill, not what his woke employees have told him. So let's examine the bill, because it's better to know what's in it than what you've been told is in it. What I'm about to say comes directly from the Florida Senate website, so I'm not paraphrasing here, like the mob does. Here is HB 1557. Parental Rights in Education requires district school boards to adopt procedures that comport with certain provisions of law for notifying students' parent of specified information. Requires such procedures to reinforce fundamental right of parents to make decisions regarding upbringing and control of their children. Prohibits school district from adopting procedures or student support forms that prohibit school district personnel from notifying parent about specified information, or that encourage student to withhold from parent such information. Prohibits school district personnel from discouraging or prohibiting parental notification and involvement in critical decisions affecting students' mental, emotional, or physical well-being. Prohibits classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in certain grade levels. Requires school districts to notify parents of healthcare services. Authorizes parent to bring action against school district to obtain declaratory judgment. Provides for additional award of injunctive relief, damages, and reasonable attorney fees and court costs to certain parents. This is just part of the language, but I've read the entire bill. And really, in summary, it places the, let's just say, social elements of education back into the hands of the parents in terms of how they wish to raise their child. Much of the language involves physical and mental well-being, and the notification of said well-being directly to the parent. The issue that most LGBTQ groups have with the paragraph about school personnel or third-party groups being barred from discussing sexual identity and orientation in grade levels kindergarten through third grade. The language that's used in the bill is developmentally appropriate. That can certainly be a somewhat subjective determination. However, given that kindergartners through third graders have not developed these notions of sexuality at that age, any sort of quote-unquote education could confuse those students. What the bill does not say is that LGBTQ people or groups should be discriminated against. It merely addresses the discussion of any concept of sexual or gender identity in the classroom at this formative age. Let's look at a case study of this in real life and the consequences of it. Kaylin Swaney is the parent of a kindergarten girl at Rockland Academy Gateway in California. Have a listen to her story.
June 7th, I went to pick up my daughter from kindergarten, and she ran up to me and said that her friend was no longer a boy, he was now a girl, and that he had a new girl name. Went home, asked my daughter about it. I looked up the book on YouTube. My daughter told me the name of the book. It was I Am Jazz. So we watched the book being read, and we found out that she had been taught what transgenderism is. He had come to school dressed as a boy. The teacher had read the book, and afterwards he went into the bathroom, which was in the classroom. He went into the bathroom, changed into a dress, and came out. He was then announced as his new girl name, and the class was told that he was now a girl. For my daughter, having that book read and then seeing her little friend that she had known since preschool go into a bathroom, change clothes, and come out, in her 5-year-old brain, she thought, oh my goodness, all I have to do to change into a boy is to change my clothes. My daughter was taking a bath, and she got up out of the water and her hair was slicked back, and she saw a reflection of herself. And she started crying and shaking, and she was like, Mommy, I turned into a boy. I don't want to be a boy. And she was scared. She was really concerned about what she was wearing or how she looked. There were other kids in the class that were afraid that their blood could turn into boy blood. Another little boy went home, and his mom had to have the entire sex talk with him about body parts. It was very confusing. And again, the parents had no idea what had been taught in class. So they were all exposed to this highly controversial sexual topic without having any, without even thinking about their own sexuality yet. There were members of the LGBT community that were actually transgender that came up to us and said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that happened. And I stand with you, and I'm for parental rights. And that wasn't right what happened, and I'm so sorry that got taught to them. And that to me was just so amazing, because the point of it was I was protecting my daughter and the other kids in that class, because they all have the right to be protected, all of them. And so it was actually really beautiful.
As you can tell from that distraught mother in California, even many in the LGBTQ community understood her sorrow and agreed that what was happening in that classroom was inappropriate. What has really gotten conflated in all of this discussion is that equality is the same thing as entirely changing culture, especially at the parent-child level. For instance, no one is abridging the right for the gay community to express themselves. That's what the First Amendment guarantees. But such lifestyles, be they everything from gay to polyamorous to heterosexual porn or even bestiality, they don't have to be discussed with 5-year-olds. I mean, is it fair to introduce the concept of porn to kids that young? Michael Jackson seems to have done so, according to James Safechuck and Wade Robeson. And it was that introduction that groomed them for his predatory behavior. And I know that all this is alleged, but it seems that this might have been more of a pattern than an anomaly. When you change a child's neurological development, you rewire them. Teaching a child to be compassionate is different from teaching them about gender fluidity. A young boy who is into music or the arts or theater is not de facto gay any more than a young girl who likes to play soccer is a lesbian. Later in life, perhaps that changes. But for any educator to begin to influence the child in a certain way is to be intrusive. If this bill had said educators must not interfere if a child bullies another child who may not fit in, that would be a travesty. I don't know anyone who would support that. But like DeSantis said, you gotta read the bill. And a staffer apparently dropped off a copy of it to the Disney office in Orlando. One of our biggest problems today in America is allowing groups to control the narrative and misinform us. The Georgia election laws are racist, or the Florida Don't Say Gay bill is harmful, even though the bill never even mentions the word gay. Who came up with that language? I'll tell you who. People who don't read bills, that's who. I've said in the past that right-of-center people, conservatives, libertarians, people, they usually want to allow people to live their lives however they want to as long as they don't infringe upon them. But leftists want to enforce their way of life upon you. This comes from the roots of Marxism, which is to institutionally and intentionally mandate things. Think about mask mandates and lockdowns. There's no freedom to be found there. Legislatures of individual states have to serve their constituents. And Florida has chosen DeSantis and others to protect parental rights. On the other hand, Californians have chosen Gavin Newsom's style, where transgenderism is infused at tender ages. It's a polar opposite approach. But the difference is people are exiting California and moving to Florida. Why on earth would those people then try to vote for representatives that think like Newsom? And let's be honest about transgender athletics. DeSantis signing a bill to ban transgender athletes in women's sports is not from a desire to discriminate, but rather a desire to protect the integrity and fair competition of women's sports. That's about as feminist as you can get. The left is losing feminism. Who would have thought? The GOP is embracing women who want to ensure true female competition. A person's gender identity cannot supersede their physical superiority in competition. Big multinational corporations like Disney have found themselves at a crossroads. Do they fold to the desires of their loudest few? Or do they make the smart business decisions and uphold the rights of all? Bob Chapek made the unwise decision to act upon either false information or at the very least, the misguided interpretation of a few, rather than the millions of customers he serves. Did he do any polling of those who walked through Disney's gates this week? Imagine if they were all surveyed. Do you think that K through third graders should be taught about transgenderism and sexual identity? If he had done that, and the survey came back unanimously in favor of it, then I could see him saying, hey, we really need to evaluate this law. Let's pause some things, because our customer base is speaking. But he didn't do that. He did exactly what Coca-Cola did. They made abrupt changes to please a few so that they could virtue signal to the world. Look, folks, corporations are vastly underestimating their customers. They aren't listening to them, and that's a problem. But they sure do listen to China, but they won't say anything to them. I encourage those of you who are consumers of Disney to write Bob Chapek. Let him know how you feel, regardless of where you stand on this issue. I think I know how most parents feel about this, but remember that giving any of your money to Disney is to condone Chapek's knee-jerk decision-making. We live in a free country, folks, where we can speak our minds and speak with our wallets. I'm Beau, and that's the show.